Hi, I'm Robert Wick with Thrive Coaching, and let me take a minute right now to talk about the kind of person I believe I'm addressing when I'm talking about the coaching work that I do and when I get into the discussion around neuroplasticity and the brain. The kind of person I'm talking about is very much like myself. Somebody age wise, probably 60 plus, somebody that has been highly successful in their life, in their business work, somebody who has perhaps benefited financially from that work and is reasonably comfortable or quote unquote high net worth, has a lot going for them in life, probably has a beautiful home, drives a nice car, the big boat, all of that stuff. But for some reason, they can't find a way to stay removed from their addiction from a long period of time. That addiction could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be other things. But for some reason, they haven't found a way to stay removed from it, to stop the use of drugs, to stop the use of alcohol. And if you're like me, that's where I was. And what I discovered in retrospect, what I was searching for all those years, and I went to my fair share of six-figure plus high-end treatment centers. I could rattle off the names. If you've traveled that path, you'd know every one of them. But I kept coming back, not knowing at the time what I was looking for. What I was looking for was hope. And I suspect if you're watching this video today, consciously or unconsciously, that's part of what you're looking for, hope. How do I overcome this damned addiction? For years, with all the success I've had in my life, I keep going back to this active use, and I want it to end. I want it to end for good. So let me talk to you a little bit more about a term that perhaps is relatively new in the recovery world, and that's discussion of the word neuroplasticity. So if you're like me, having traveled this road of recovery for a long, long time, many different attempts at recovery, the high-end treatment centers that I mentioned, on the first page of my website, which by the way is robertvwick.com, my name, I talk about the fact that I engage in neuro-restorative brain coaching. And a lot of people will come back to me and say, Bob, what exactly does neuro-restorative brain coaching mean? What is it all about? Neuro-restorative coaching, brain coaching, is a specialized coaching approach that blends neuroscience, traditional transformational coaching, and psychology with the goal of helping to create lasting change in a person by rewiring their thoughts, rewiring their brain, rewiring the way they think. It helps change and create new behavioral patterns that they live, but also new patterns of thinking that the brain is now experiencing. Therefore, the neurotransformative part of it. What is the neuro change, the change that we're making, or the transformative action that's taking place in the brain? This type of coaching draws on neuroplasticity specifically to restructure our old habits, our thought patterns, and our emotional responses. We're going to dive into your actual personal identity. It dives into what you believe in and your emotional response to a shift that you want to make in your personal narrative. Your personal narrative, perhaps up to now, has been this person that struggles with relapse behavior. You're caught in that repetitive cycle of recovery, but you never give up. Now what we want to dive into is how do you respond to that addictive behavior? What are the thoughts that are going through your mind when you actually do relapse, or more importantly, that period of time leading up to the actual relapse behavior? So my role as a coach is to help be a facilitator of insights for you, helping you assess kind of your own personal inner wisdom, getting in touch with your real authentic self, And what I mean by that authentic self is that person that hasn't allowed you to give up. We all know people that have given up in their recovery. In many cases, they're no longer with us. The ultimate consequences of chronic relapse behavior. But you, like myself, experienced, for whatever reason, I never gave up. I kept coming back. I wanted to find a way out, and ultimately what I was really looking for was help. And that's what neuro restorative brain coaching is about, leading you down a path of actually finding hope. It's especially designed for high performers, leaders, and those struggling with limiting beliefs about themselves. Neuroplasticity, very specifically, in coaching, in what I call this neuro restorative brain coaching, is exploring the brain's ability to change and to adapt by forming new neural pathways. And what the hell does new neural pathways mean? It's how we think in our head, and it's what our brain is telling us. Neural pathways. What is the information that's flowing through our brain? And if you're like me during my days of active addiction, those thoughts that were flowing through the brain were very, very negative. That I wasn't good enough. I didn't have the ability to recover. That I was just another vanilla chronic alcoholic. Those were the cards I was dealt, and that there was no way out. Fortunately, there was that person inside of me that didn't believe that. I may have said that to myself. The voice in my head may have been telling me that, but there was someone inside of me that at the end of the day, flat out didn't believe it. And that's where the process of neuroplasticity coaching can help us get back in touch with that person, to get back in touch with that inner hero. The reason I'm talking about neuroplasticity is that for many of us, a common belief we have around our own personal substance use disorder and our activity is that it's some kind of personal failing, that it's our fault that we use drugs or we pick up the drink, that it's, quote, an excuse to deal with whatever is going on in our life, when in fact, we have learned that the disease of addiction is just that. It's a disease that literally resides in our brain. We were born with it. We have no control over the fact that this disease, neurologically and physically, is in our brain. And when I discovered that, I'll tell you how I discovered it. I went to a treatment center called Caring Treatment Center. This was here in Delray Beach, Florida. And they wanted to do this kind of neuropsychological or something profiling. And they put a cap on my head. And this cap had 19 wires attached to it. And I think where it ended, it was called an electrode. And I had no idea what the hell was going on. And it's a spooky feeling to have a cap sitting on your head. And what it was doing, it was taking pictures of my brain. And about a week later, I was called into a meeting. There were two doctors, similar age to me, sitting at a table. And they had 3 color pictures sitting on the table. And I made some smart-ass comment about the fact that I was colorblind. Those are cool-looking pictures, but what am I going to get out of this? And they kind of laughed it off, and they said, Bob, sit your ass down and let us tell you what these pictures are all about with all the bright colors. These are actual pictures of your brain. Now pull up your chair, look a little closer, which I did, and they went to one specific picture. And they were talking about the color changes in the picture. And the color changes were actually photos of my brain, what was going on. And they pointed to this one particular color, this one particular shade. I honestly don't remember what it was. And what they were telling me was, Bob, this is the disease of addiction. We can identify it, and this is a picture of where it's literally sitting in your brain. Now, if you're like me, that's pretty heavy right there. I mean, that was a powerful statement. And here are these 2 doctors looking at me, trying to be as calm and steady as they could to get my attention, kind of turn off the sarcasm, Bob, for a minute. You need to hear this. And when I saw the picture, And I understood what they were telling me was this addiction was in my brain and that it was manageable. I mean, there's other addictions and diseases we're all aware of that are part of the brain, but you get the disease, say, of a cancer. It may or may not be curable. I mean, what news to hear? I'm being told that I've got the disease of addiction in my brain, but it's very manageable. It can be controlled. And for the lucky ones like us who haven't given up, there is hope. For those that do give up, we know what the consequences are. But the moment I was shown that, I must tell you, a sense of relief just came over me. It started at the top of my head, went down through my whole body and back out my feet. And I can visualize it like it was yesterday. And this was approximately 8 years ago. And I was sitting in the chair, and the thoughts that were going through my head was, Bob, thank God you have this disease. This explains all this irrational behavior that you've had over the last 30 years. This explains your inability to not maintain long periods of sobriety. This explains that voice in your head that was trying to tell you, yeah, you're not good enough. You're just another run-of-the-mill alcoholic. All that was happening, the thoughts I had of myself, that, yeah, I wasn't strong enough. Now I understand the source of that. And the source of that thinking, the source of those beliefs was this disease that is physically in my brain. And that led to further discussions, which I still experience when I have the opportunity today, around this word, neuroplasticity. And again, neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself, to change those negative thoughts into positive thoughts. If they understand that it's a disease of the brain, this enables them to now embrace a real sense of hope. I have a chance to control this addiction. I have a chance to manage it. I have a chance to break out of this relapse behavior. I mean, I know for me, it was the other day I took a different route home from the gym, and I drove by the old liquor store I used to go to. I'm in the car and went right by it. It got my attention for a minute. Like, I remember going there. So it tells me that it's still there. Those thoughts. Now, I don't know the last time I ever had a thought about really picking up a drink or smoking a joint or doing a line or any of that stuff. It's been a long time, but it's still there. I got to be aware of it. So I think through neuroplasticity, and the rewiring of my brain, it's created an awareness of the fact that I'm an alcoholic, but it's created an awareness in kind of a positive way. Yeah, I am, but life goes on. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've learned how to go through some of this transformation. I've learned and have done some rewiring of my brain. And my thought process today is different. So yeah, when I think of the fact that I'm alcoholic, I think of it in the terms of, yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones that am aware that I'm an alcoholic not due to personal faults of my own. I'm an alcoholic because this disease is in my brain. I was born with it, and life experiences somewhere along the line, it was activated. And for me, I know almost specifically when it was dramatically activated, and that was in 1988, the death of my father. I know my whole drinking pattern changed completely, and that's when I really went off the rails and suffered all the way through my recovery in 2018. You think about that, 88 to 98 to 08 to 8, I mean, it was a long period of time. But I think a lot of people suffering from active addiction, they view it as a personal failing. It's my fault that I use drugs. It's my fault that I pick up a drink. It's my fault that I can stop for a period of time, but ultimately go back to using again. It's something wrong with me. And why do I keep doing this? God, if only there was hope. If only I could find a way out. And I think when we go through an understanding of what neuroplasticity is all about, and that we have the ability to change our thinking, to change our belief system, and overwhelm our brain with those positive thoughts, that we do rewire our brain. We do create new neural pathways. We do create a different way of thinking about ourselves, and it's a positive way of thinking about ourselves, and it truly gives us that sense of hope. But for me to understand all that, to experience my sense of hope, I personally had to spend 6 months working with a very unique coach, on average for an hour to an hour and a half a week, just talking about different things that had happened in my life. But what we talked about were all positive things, things I had accomplished, never the negative things that happened in my childhood or the childhood trauma or other traumatic experiences. Those belong with a true therapist, or the kind of people we work with when we go to a recovery center. This was talking about all that Robert Wick had done and accomplished in his life, going back to early childhood, to the earliest thoughts I had that I could possibly remember, where I felt I did something good. I did something good for myself, I did something good for somebody else, whatever that was. And we created all of those thoughts through my entire life, right up to this very moment. And as we went through that, and I realized what a good, positive, caring person I had always been, my view of myself really started to change, and that sense of hope became real. I could put my arms around it. And all it was rediscovering the same Robert Wick that was inside me when I was born. I've always had this good person. I refer to him as my inner champion, that champion that wouldn't allow me to give up on my hope of becoming sober and putting the drink down. For over 30 years, if not longer, I had experienced sobriety, and then I'd fall back to drinking again. Sobriety to drinking, the severity of which changed over time. But something wouldn't allow me to give up, and now I understand what it was. And it was that person inside, that inner champion. And having experienced the fact that I have this good person inside of me, when I started working with some of the folks at Karen and going through this process of understanding neuroplasticity and the fact that I have a disease that resides in my brain, that positive self-talk that was somewhat new to me, but kind of grew over time. I mean, once you start thinking positively about yourself, it catches fire. If you're doing the right things every day and experiencing the results actually of living a positive, thriving life, this takes a life of its own. So today, the thinking I have about myself is completely different from where it was not so many years ago, because of the power of this neuroplasticity and the fact that my brain has rewired itself. My brain, when it engages thoughts of the real Robert Wick, these thoughts are now in a very positive fashion. I mean, and it makes you humble to even talk about it. But because of how I conduct myself on a daily basis, the coaching work I do with other people, the impact that I've had on the lives of other people in recovery, and what they've told me that impact was or how it feels, gives me a completely different view on the world, on my life, on my core beliefs about myself. So envision yourself, if you're looking for hope, going through those thoughts you have in the private moments of your own mind about your substance use, and your inability to maintain a long period of being clean and sober. And here I go again, another relapse. And you look in the mirror sometimes and go, what is wrong with me? What's going on? Why can't I get this? You can get it. You can get it. And what you need to do, and I can help you, is rediscover that person that hasn't allowed you to give up. And we're going to get involved in this process of neuroplasticity. We're going to go through a lot of discussions based around accomplishments you've had in life, things you've done for others as well as yourself, and create those new neuro pathways. At the end of that process, I can guarantee you, how you look at yourself, how you view yourself, how you think of yourself will be different. And it will be different in a more positive way. Permanently, that I can't speak to. That goes to what you do every day as you're living your life. But if you can learn to believe in yourself, transform those inner thoughts, and practice it on a daily basis, yeah, your life will never be the same. And when those thoughts come into your head about relapsing, about picking up that drug, about picking up that drink, you're going to catch yourself, because I've had this same experience. That thought comes into my head. No, Robert, time out. This is who you are today. Your belief in yourself is such that no, you're not going down that easy path of looking for some kind of emotional relief from the drug or the drink. Get back on track. You know what you're doing. And it's a wonderful experience. What I believe about myself today is that through the grace of God, I've become the person that I am today. That the path I've traveled my entire life was scripted out from the day I was born. I think back, I was less than a year old, and I was adopted out of a home in Brooklyn, New York. They say 1 out of 7 people in this country can trace their roots back through Brooklyn. How gifted, how fortunate was I to have my life so dramatically impacted at such a young age, and what could have been had I remained in that adoption home. And I think back to that event, even though obviously I can't recall it at that age. That was God putting his hand on my shoulder, saying, Bob, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And then all of the experiences I had in the rest of my life, I've come to learn, and more importantly, believe. Big difference, learning and believing. I believe God's had his hand on my shoulder my entire life, has always been there with me. The real difficult times, the consequences of my alcoholism, which at times we all know were difficult, relationships, etc., were experiences I needed to go through, kind of the consequences, if you will, to get me to the point where I was seeking help. I was looking for a solution. That all those times I went to these high-end treatment centers, whether that was Hanley in Palm Beach, Passages in California, the one where I finally found hope, Karen here in Delray, I was always doing that for other people. I was doing it for my wife to quiet the noise at home. I was doing it for my children so they wouldn't worry so much about Dad. I was doing it through people that worked for me at the company that I owned. I was never really doing it for me. Yeah, I'll pay $100,000, go to a high-end treatment center, have great food, get some great therapists, walk out feeling emotionally, physically, and spiritually stronger, and then life will go on. I did that 5 different times at the treatment centers I mentioned. It wasn't a one-time 30-day event. It was a pretty expensive cycle of relapse behavior going through them. Then finally the consequences became real enough that I thought I sought out treatment. I was looking for hope. because I, Robert Wick, really wanted it. It wasn't for anybody else. And the event that caused that, I went to the Karen Ocean Drive program in 2017, from which I gained long-term sobriety. A year and a half after getting divorced. And I was married for 40 years, literally 40 years, to my high school sweetheart. And I think it was that emotional separation that I went through, knowing that my chronic alcoholism had finally, I believe, caused her to give up on me. The pain of understanding that was the emotional bottom that I needed to experience, so that when I knocked on the front door of Karen Ocean Drive, I was there for me. I wanted it now. Was it a form of desperation? Sure, absolutely it was. I was desperate. I had been living this life of a chronic relapsing alcoholic for my entire adult life. But now a real consequence hit me. And perhaps, so it was not perhaps, it was the realization that I was truly on my own. My kids loved me, they supported me. I thought I had a lot of friends in life. What I found out is I had a lot of acquaintances, a couple of real true friends. You find out the differences between friends and acquaintances when something dramatic happens in your life. And for me, this was the most dramatic experience of them all. But when I walked in to Ocean Drive this time, it's because I wanted it. And if there's any key difference in my whole recovery story, is I had to realize the necessary consequences, as difficult as they were. And I think at that point, perhaps God was whispering in my ear, you know, Robert, enough's enough. You've paid your price. You've had your consequences. Now it's time for you. You're by yourself. You're 60-something years old. Well, let's get on with your life for you. You can do this. And I think that's what walked me in the front door of Karen.